In this video, I'm going to tell you about the one and only way that you can fail. Haircut will be coming soon, so the end of the fez, at least for a while, is nigh. I see people talk about failure a lot in tabletop wargaming, whether I see it in comments or Facebook posts, though I don't really do Facebook too much anymore. Much more lately, I see it in the chat in Twitch. People talking about how they're failing, to get their stuff painted, or they're failing on getting it painted to the level that they want. And as I've been watching Twitch and streaming more on Twitch, I'm coming across more of this kind of conversation because it's a much more immediate sort of conversation. It's conversational, if you will, and so it's kind of pretty much rapid fire. And people, I think, have a lot of things weighing on their mind about failing their whole hobby. And I'm going to tell you that there's really only one way that you can fail, and it's not what you think. People will get into this hobby maybe because their friends are getting into it or have been into it, and so they want to, it's peer pressure a little bit, or they just want to kind of go along, or they look at it and they go, that's really cool. It's amazing to watch these games when everything's all painted up and really amazing and all that kind of stuff. And then they get into it. Sometimes it's because they see stuff on Twitch or on the internet, YouTube, whatever. Sometimes it's because they happenstance walk by a store and see some amazing stuff in the windows, and then that germinates a seed, all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of different vectors that come into this hobby, and the big players in this hobby are trying to make as many vectors for people to get into the hobby as possible. However, there are times when you get into the hobby because you think it's going to be amazing, and then you get yourself a box of models and some glue, some clippers, and all that kind of stuff, and you put things together and you build things. And you may not enjoy it very much, and it's kind of difficult for you. And then, you maybe do another box of things if you get to that point, and then, maybe, we'll see. And it just sort of goes from there, and then hopefully you maybe even get to painting, and you start to work on some painting. You prime a bunch of stuff outside, maybe you goof some things up, maybe you don't, maybe it works great. You start painting, and you go through all of these things, and you find that you don't enjoy it. You just don't like it. It's not for you. And so you quit. Sell your stuff on eBay, do that kind of stuff. That's not failing, not by a long shot. That is you trying something new, determining that it's not for you, and then going on and trying to find something else that is for you. That's not failure. It's not. Sitting down and trying new things and then finding out maybe that's the thing that's not for you, that's not failure, that's growth, that's expansion as a human being. And it's something we should all try. And just because you try something and you don't like it, and you're not interested in it, that doesn't make it a failure if you decide to quit doing it. Now, let's say you go through this same sort of situation again. You get into it, you start buying some things, you glue things together, you go through all that stuff. Maybe you love the building, you just love the working with the plastics and the glues and the little tiny files and all that stuff. And then you get to the painting part and you really don't like the painting part, and it's difficult and you find it hard to do. So you work on building more stuff and building more stuff and building more stuff, and you paint very slowly. You don't go along with it very quickly. And then maybe that's just the way things progress, and you just keep building because you love building, and you paint sometimes because you either feel you need to for a game, or you just, maybe get a wild hair and you start painting and you're like, but you just don't enjoy it. That's also not failing. That is you finding that you enjoy one aspect of the hobby. Maybe it's just the building. Maybe you don't like building, but you like painting. Or maybe you just like the lore, or you just like the strategy. There's things that you can do that, again, this is not a hobby where you have to do all of it. There are plenty of people out there who love to build and paint and never play. And as we've seen, obviously, there are also people out there who, love to play and not so much into the building and painting. And sometimes they have to do it and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you're that person who loves to build, but you don't like to paint. But you got a friend who loves to paint, hates to build. That's a perfect world in some situations, because then the two of you can work together and crank out some amazing stuff. And that's great. But again, finding a part of the hobby and sticking with it and doing it that you enjoy, again, not a failure. Maybe it's the painting that you really love and you don't really like the building, like I mentioned earlier, and you paint and you're just never quite happy with what you're doing. And you keep doing it, like you enjoy the process of it, but the end goal is always just not what you thought. And you kind of keep working at it and you keep working at it, because you enjoy the process, but you're always kind of like, nah, It's just never quite, I'm failing because I'm not hitting the idea in my head or the idea that I get from the internet and all kinds of other places of what it should look like. Again, this is not failure. You're finding a hobby that you enjoy. And though the actual end result is not what you think it should be, you might actually be wrong. If you do it for 2 years and you look at a piece that you finish at the end of your 2-year stint of doing a lot of painting because you enjoy it, and you compare it to a bunch of stuff online, it still may not be the things that you perceive that are the way to do things. But if you take that piece and compare it to the piece that you first completed when you first started, that you also weren't happy with, but you take those two pieces, look at them together, you will be hard-pressed to find that this piece you did most recently is not better than the piece you did before. Barring any kind of physiological, malady, like something's gone weird with your eyes or your hands or something like that. That happens too, certainly. There are health risks or health, things that can come up. But if you're just practicing and enjoying and doing it, but never quite happy with it because you compare it to other people's stuff. I did a video about don't compare your stuff to other people's stuff some time ago. Pachow. And, if you don't make it to this level, well, okay, that's fine. Again, not a failure. You can just keep working. If you're enjoying the process and you're working, you're going to be getting better. You're going to be getting faster. I got better to a point until I hit a point where I kind of plateaued, and then I started getting faster and made a video about that as well. Pachow. So there are a lot of different things, but as long as you keep working on it, you're not failing. When you sit down and say, I want to compare myself to this, working to that is not even a bad goal. I'm not telling you you shouldn't compare yourself. I'm saying that if you do, you should be patient about it because the person you're comparing yourself to very probably either has an art background and has just moved into miniature painting and has only been doing it for 2 years, but they've been painting other stuff for 15, 20 years, or they've been painting miniatures for 15 or 20 years, and you're taking your maybe 2 years and comparing it to that. And you shouldn't do that. Compare yourself to yourself, see how you're going, and then you won't be failing. So then the question becomes, well, so is it impossible to fail in the realm of tabletop miniature wargaming? I mean, it doesn't sound like it from what you've been saying here, guy with a fez. You can fail in your hobby. And the way that you fail in your hobby is that you have the passion, you have the interest, and you enjoy doing it, but something, whatever it might be, stops you from doing it, and you let that thing stop you. Now, you may have to work 3 jobs and you have 4 kids and you just, but even then, if you love the hobby, you probably are going to find some time once every 2 weeks where you can sneak away for half an hour and clip some sprues and do some things and maybe file some little people and get their, seams to be all nice and smooth or whatever. And, it's forward movement. Any kind of forward movement you make in the hobby that you enjoy is never failure. But when you enjoy the hobby and you let something stop you, whether it is time, whether it is a perceived amount of quality, it doesn't look like the stuff I see on the box. Well, yeah, you've just started. And I've talked about this time and time again. If you take those things and you allow them to make you stop doing what you enjoy, again, I'm going to go back to the beginning. If you don't enjoy the hobby, you got into it and you hate it or whatever, it's not for you. If you get out of it, that's not a failure. It's when you enjoy the hobby and you really love it, or even like it a lot, and let something stop you from doing it, that's when there's a failure in your process. That's how when you personally fail, when you don't have something in your life to help you, to make you happier, a hobby, a passion of any kind. It doesn't have to be tabletop wargaming. It could be anything. If you're very interested in something and you love it, and you enjoy it when you do it, and something about it stops you, something outside, inside, doesn't matter, stops you from doing it, and you allow it to do so, that's when you fail. So don't do that. Try to find something to allow you, even if it's just a little bit of I can get this done once per month. I can do it twice per month. I can do it maybe 3 times per month. That's good enough. It's not going anywhere. And as you go, things may change. You might be able to get more time into it. And you might find other things that you're doing that actually, work is work, family's family, but you might find other things that you do, I don't actually enjoy this as much as I enjoy that. So I'm going to stop doing this so I can spend more time doing that. And that's the important thing. You can only fail if you stop doing the stuff that you love, and you can always do the stuff you love at least a little bit, and then you won't fail.